joining us. And with that, I'll hand it over to Eric.
Thanks, Emily. Just by way of introductions, as Emily said, my name's Eric House. I'm an enterprise sales director at ZIA Consulting. I worked for a number of years within insurance and financial services and really understand the operating departments of those types of organizations. And since then have been able to go back to those organizations with solutions to be able to problem solve some of the issues that they see in terms of business process and workflow and just overall content management as well. Mike?
And I'm Mike Matthews. Good day, everyone. I've been in the business development world for about 15 years now, working mainly in software as a solution or service. And my job really is to talk to people and to demystify the IT world and put it into plain English so all can understand.
Very good. So today what we're going to talk about is really kind of the pain of siloed content, unlocking that siloed content, and then the benefits of federation. Mike, any additional thoughts here?
Yeah, and just by way of, again, demystifying things. So when people think of siloed content, what exactly is that? That's basically data in different repositories or content management services. And why is it locked? So it's locked because a lot of times that this content is in different repos, different content management systems. The data is not filed uniformly across those repos, and that's why it becomes dark because of this. So, and by definition, what is federation? Now, I looked up what the definition of federation is, but with regard to this, I think the best thing that describes it is the action of forming states or organizations into a single group with centralized control. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is having a central area of control for your content.
Great, thanks. So let's dive in a little bit. So to kind of dive a little deeper on what Mike was just saying, talking about the siloed content in general, let's talk about where your content currently lives. You've got various content management systems. This could be FileNet, this could be Alfresco, this could be, ASG Mobius, or wherever else. So you've got various content management systems that you're seeing at an enterprise level. You could have line of business applications. So for instance, if you have an underwriting system, if you're in insurance or in banking, you might have a claims system. Various business applications that are tailored towards a specific process. Cloud sync and shares, and share drives, and even one of the biggest proponents that we see in terms of where siloed content is in email. We walk into so many different customers and we hear, well, I live out of my email inbox, or I live out of my Outlook system, and my folder system is perfect. And in which case, the folder system that they have is different from their peer who does the exact same different work.
Yeah.
So if you think about the various groups across your organization, they all work a little differently with your content. So sensitive content has so many uses and locations.
Yeah, and sometimes this organizations don't even structure their data in a file system. So they just have it sitting in these repositories or these ECMs, and it's just partitioned by whatever business group is looking for it, be it legal, finance, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not easy to find.
No, definitely not. So let's talk about this. So if you think about it, we use the concept of knowledge workers, and knowledge workers could be someone who's in customer service. This could be someone who's just interfacing. This could be salespeople. The idea is that these are people that are taking in content, manipulating it, interfacing with it, and putting some sort of output together. And the average knowledge worker spends about 2.5 hours a day, or roughly 30% of their workday, searching for information. And what are they really looking for? They want to understand, is this information accurate? Is this the most recent version? They also have to think about, has legal or marketing approved the use of this content? Am I allowed to send what I'm sending? And am I securely sending what I'm sending? These are all things that people worry about subconsciously on a day-to-day basis. And depending on how they answer those questions or how they interpret that, or if they're even finding the right information, can have a major impact on your business.
And just by way of example, by way of example, I worked at an organization that had 5 different repositories or content management systems, and I would have to do weekly and monthly reporting, and there was no single version or access point for all of those, and there was no structure, or there was no one entry point to get all that information. So it would take me, for like a weekly report, it would take around a day to complete just that activity, and then for monthly reports, it would sometimes take me 2.5 days, all because this information wasn't federated.
Yeah, so those, I mean, those are highly impactful when you're losing, whole days of productivity just being able to put things together. That's a good example, Mike.
Yeah, and I mean, just like, what else could I be doing with my time other than trying to find the information that already exists?
Exactly. So, all right. So, how does this happen, right? This doesn't just happen overnight. So, lack of planning. New management comes in. You've got change in direction, budget constraints. You'll see homegrown systems. So, many shops that we work with or many customers we work with might have a build it themselves mentality, and at a time that was something that served them well. Many organizations that we work with today have really they're looking at more off-the-shelf configuration software, in which case they have to get off of these homegrown systems. One thing, there's a term out there called shadow IT. And the idea there is that because of the systems that they have aren't meeting specific business needs, users themselves will bring in different systems. We have customers that we work with where all of a sudden Dropbox might show up because people, users were bringing in Dropbox, or they might start up their own independent SharePoint when SharePoint wasn't a corporate regulated IT system. In which case that can go wildly out of control. Mike, I think you've got a good SharePoint story, right?
Yeah, I have a friend that actually works with SharePoint, and they refer to it as a dumpster fire because people will just throw information in there. And again, it's not set up in a file structure at all. It's just someplace, well, okay, well, when people start asking, okay, where is this document? Oh, it's in SharePoint. Okay, that's great, but exactly where? And this is exactly how the term dark data gets said, because the data is not trying to be found. It's there, it's needed, but there's no indexing for it. So it's just somewhere in this dark cloud of this this content management system. So it's lost for all intents and purposes.
Sure, and then trying to govern that content later. If you've got secure data in there, that's a whole. I mean, dumpster fire really applies there. Trying to govern that's a mess.
Yes,
absolutely,
very much so.
So the last point here: acquiring systems that come with M&A. Well, why is that important? I worked at a financial services company years ago where, my first year there, we actually acquired another very large insurance company. And the statistic they kept reading to us and telling us was that during an M&A year, both companies, given original sales numbers, will only do 60% of what they had done previously in revenue because they are so distracted by the M&A activities. And this doesn't just mean, M&A in terms of, acquiring new people, but being able to put together your disparate systems. So all of a sudden, if you have, if your organization has, 4 content management systems, the other organization you might be acquiring could relatively have another 4 to 6 content management systems as is. So just the additional downtime of having to acquire these systems, get everything organized, get everything in the right order, and then it goes back to the original points of, is this the right version? Is this a single source of truth? Do we have a single source of truth? And all of a sudden productivity goes way down because people don't know which way to go or which way to turn when it comes to mergers and acquisitions.
And how much time is IT?
These problems, yeah, go ahead.
How much time is IT spending on trying to get these systems to talk to each other or just to get the information to the user? That's a very good point, Eric.
Sure, and you've got 2 different IT organizations that are coming together as well that have different approaches and need to find a common way forward. So you'll see massive losses of productivity. And what we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes with actual federation is a way to help reduce that massive loss. So what is content federation? So content federation at the very simplistic level, I think over the years, many IT professionals have heard the concept, a single pane of glass. Well, that's really what federation promises. It provides you a single user interface. And so you might have, multiple systems of record, antiquated systems, you might have mainframe systems, what have you, but you need that single piece of truth or that single way to be able to look across all these repositories and understand what you have within that within those content management systems. In which case federation or federated search in that regard allows you to be able to go through and be able to see everything that's available quickly and efficiently in a single interface and have the appropriate metadata and understand what is the current version, what was the previous version. It answers a lot of the questions for you without having to go into multiple user interfaces. So that's it. I'm going to throw to Mike for the next couple slides and we'll go from there.
Yeah, And you know, when I need to go to a different slide, Eric, I'll just say slide, and we can move on like that.
I got you.
So what does federation look like? So when we're talking about T-Search, which is our offering in this instance, it indexes your user content. So if you're using Box, SharePoint, Google Drive, we'll use Alfresco to index that content into an indexing engine like Solr or Elasticsearch. And so the metadata lives in those indexes. And T-Search runs searches against those indexes, not the repositories or the ECMs. So in each document is assigned a key that's used for content services calls to each ECM. Box, SharePoint, Google Drive, they're all given content service connectors. So each index will be aware of who its content services connector is. So you'll be able to see and interact with the data in one place. So simply put, we're a content migration tool. We index the data and allow it to be searchable all in one place. And it gives an aggregated view of your enterprise to user data. And T-Search is different because users with proper permissions can make changes to content that can be found. They can search all content at once in one place and make changes to that content, and that's the big difference, because it's one thing if you have the ability to see the information, but you have the ability within T-Search to manipulate it. Now I'll talk about that in a second. So so say a user wants to find and interact with a doc in SharePoint, and the same user wants to find and interact with something in DocuShare. What they'll have to do is go to both places to accomplish this. And our Content Services API lets the user do all of these things from one place. And T-Search is for all content, not just the one repository. So the difference between, and I heard someone once say, well, this is like Google. Well, not necessarily. The difference between Google and T-Search is the content in Google is trying to be found. It's essentially raising its hand saying, hey, here I am. And siloed, with siloed content, that content, like I was saying before, is not necessarily trying to be found. Sometimes it's dark. And so in most cases, this is why the term dark data exists. So they hide behind layers of security, silos, email, what have you. And T-Search finds that content and allows it to be interacted with, whereas Google only allows users to click on a link and then go to that content. So we index the data across the enterprise so it can be found regardless of where it is. We're essentially a virtual enterprise content management tool. Slide, please. So here's an example of a template. Now, first thing to keep in mind is these are HTML templates, so you can manipulate these and you can make them look and act how you want them to look and act. So if you have say if you're Coca-Cola and you want everything to be branded within your enterprise with a certain look and feel, you can do that. But this is just a high level, basically a demo template. So the template has like these different parts in it. And so there's search results, actions, browsing, that kind of thing. And if you take a look down at the facets area, think of those as categories. So if you're going to Amazon and you're looking for a TV, the first thing you see is, okay, well, I'm looking for a TV. Okay, I'm looking for it to be a 52-inch, and then you can break down exactly what you're looking for, because a lot of times users don't know exactly what they're looking for. They just know that they have to find a specific piece of content. So these facets are created by extracting metadata, tagging, and classification. So when we start working with our customers and we talk to our customers to find out what their high value facets would be. So another example, oil and gas companies may want to be able to search by project type, oil wells, etc. They'll be able to put that information or build that information into the facet piece so it's easily searchable. So, and the document source is showing where the content lives. And so you can see that they have the different file systems, Exchange Online, Salesforce, what have you. And that's just showing, okay, within each file source or within each ECM, there are these specific documents that are related to that specific search. And in the list area, it shows the document type a brief summary of what it is, and then when you look at the action button on that side, you can see how it's customizable, and you can download, upload, edit, basically manipulate the data. Slide, please. So this is just showing a different version of our template, and the different color schemes, different action buttons. It's showing how you can have bulk actions, metadata export, download, selected, or upload. The user create search, and you can have users create a search and then do a new view based on that. So if you have, for example, a law office that's reviewing a case, a lawyer can do a search on all relevant content, create a new content view, and export that data for e-discovery in collaboration with that team. And you can have several versions of in that same deployment. So one business unit may want to have a specific look and feel. The executive team may want to just have charts and diagrams to make the information more easily digestible. And slide, please. So the biggest concern I hear a lot is just the security. Some believe that once we've indexed the data and they're using Federation, their security is going to be bypassed. That's not the case. We actually layer security on top of what's in place. So we still have to provide authentication, but it's done on the back end. The user won't see that, so all they're going to do is log into Simflofy, and then they have access to the siloed content. The authentication still exists, but they no longer have to log into Box, SharePoint, DocuShare. And so they also have security based on what actions they have to perform. And there's only one way, one control point, basically. So files can also be locked down by record type or properties based on permissions. And there's layered security that ensures that even before the user has access to the repository where the content resides, they'll have to bypass through our UI first. So also, if they have login access through us, if the repos denying them access, they can't get into the content. And this is why we work very closely with the sysadmins and the users up front to determine who has access to what content prior to the engagement and during the engagement. In addition, we add a layer of security so you know who and when, or auditing, pardon me, we add that layer so you can see who and when someone has access to content. So the way I like to think of it is if you're living in a regular house versus a secure community. Your front door is your first layer of security. Now, if you have Simflofy, it's not just you're in a gated community. You have a gated community that only allows you in if you have like a radio ID that allows you through the front gate. And if you don't, there's tire spikes that's going to stop you. And then once you get into the community, you can't even see the other houses. You can only see the house that you're going to. And then you get to the front door, and then you have access to that house. And I think that's the best example that I've heard it, the best way I've heard it described. Next slide, please. So what will you gain from Federation? Of course, you're going to get increased user productivity, and you're going to reduce your business operational costs. But what you really get is one version of the truth, like Eric was saying earlier. And Eric, do you have any thoughts on this slide as well?
No, I think you're kind of hitting it on the additional points here, or sorry, you're hitting it right on the head of, you know, in terms of developer savings and accelerated customer acquisition, because you're utilizing federated search or Federation in general, you don't need to really worry about, you know, migrating all the content, which can take forever and ever and ever to get done. I mean,
right.
We have some customers that if they choose to migrate for whatever reason, you know, sometimes you want to retire a system and there's cost savings within that, and that's fine. But there's also a hybrid model that we can approach too, where it's kind of a federate or migrate as you go, in which case all your information can be federated, but you can slowly migrate the information that's actually relevant to your business. And then after a certain amount of time, you can choose to cut off and retire the remaining information, assuming you're legally able to do that based on how long you're supposed to hold your content for. But there's a number of different approaches here. But at the same time, you know, there's some huge huge operational advantages and cost advantages being able to go through federation here.
Exactly. Next slide.
All right. Well, actually, so I'm gonna dive into a case study here. So this is a very large insurance company that both ZIA and Simflofy worked with last year, and their issue was they realized migration was going to take too long. So they have FileNet, they've got SharePoint, they've got a multitude of other repositories, but they don't want to migrate to one repository because they knew it was going to take forever and it was going to be very costly to do so. But they need to be able to, as an insurance company, and with what the insurance regulators are putting out, especially now with consumer protection laws and some of the other laws that are coming out, they need to be able to govern the information in place. And years ago, prior to Simflofy existing, this wasn't really a model that existed. And in fact, during this project, we actually got Gartner's attention. They were calling us and calling the customer as well, wanting to do a case study around this. But really, the idea here is that as Mike had mentioned before, we utilize in this specific instance, we can do this with multitude of vendors, but in this specific instance, we utilized Alfresco's records management solution, in which case that is your one single user interface to be able to implement your records plan. So automatic retention or automatic deletion when you have to put a legal hold on a document. So say for instance, say Mike is suing an insurance company, and for whatever reason, every single document that needs to put on legal hold that has Mike's name on it, through the Alfresco records management solution, we're able to mark Mike's name in there, in which case every single document, no matter where it lives, so whether it lives in FileNet or SharePoint or wherever else, via Simflofy actually goes through and connects to that data and changes the permissions on that document. So all of a sudden, as opposed to a document that can be versioned and edited, it becomes a separate version, it becomes read-only, and you're able to lock down that information. So utilizing systems such as Simflofy and Alfresco, and we're looking at doing this with other vendors as well, such as ASG and their records management solution. We're able to utilize the content model that you want to implement, but we're able to utilize one user interface without having to change where all the data is sourced. And we're continuing to work with Gartner on this case study as well. But as this solution evolves and evolves, this is something that hasn't really been able to be done before, and we're able to prove out the concept to this customer, and we're now working towards production.
Excellent.
So Mike, I believe this is your case study?
Yes, okay. This one is for the National Health Service in the UK. Now, they started off with a digital transformation strategy, and they were just looking to reduce costs and make it easier to support their users. And security and stability was a big concern because they were using Documentum. And it had been in place for about a decade, and it worked well, and it was designed to capture patient records with a scanning interface and workflows to correctly identify the records. And so we worked with them closely, as I mentioned before, with the IT team and the user group, to find out how the information was being handled, how it was being moved, and how to make it easier to find and work with in the future. And so what we did is deploy our content services with a focus on intelligent migration and search. And we connected to that Documentum system to export content and the metadata, and also migrate to a new repository. So the tools were deployed in a few days and completed the processing in less than a day. So the content was extracted, we added the metadata. In addition, the content was converted to PDFs, so it can be easier to distribute between the new repository. So the added benefit of that was the search interface made finding the content a lot easier. And now they have a well-organized historical records available in a very convenient format, and so they can address really any patient information access requests.
Cool. So I know we've talked a lot about, in terms of some of the use cases, what the specific use cases, and we've talked about different technologies, but you're hearing two names between ZIA and Simflofy, and you're like, who are these companies? What do they do?
Right.
So Mike, I'll let you kind of start off here and give a little bit more background in terms of who Simflofy is.
Right, and we were founded in 2012, and we have over 100 customers, and our head office is in Marietta, Georgia, which is just north of Atlanta. And globally, we have 14 employees, and we have a partner model, and many of our partners are the ones we were speaking about today, like Alfresco, Primo, Amazon Web Services. We have many partners to help us accomplish our goals for our customer group.
Very good. So at ZIA Consulting, the easiest way to describe us is that we're a system integrator. So we have partners such as Simflofy, and we mentioned a few other technologies such as Box and ASG and Alfresco. And at the end of the day, we look at the overarching picture within your organization of what are the technologies you're trying to apply, what are the technologies that you have, and how can we best apply those in order for you to help meet your goals. So we're based out of Boulder, Colorado, but we have a presence all across the country in terms of sales reps and technical people as well. But we partner with what we believe as best in breed technologies. So, I mentioned some of our partners, whether it be Simflofy or Alfresco or ASG. And really what we look at these as is technologies to meet different needs, needs and ends. But there's very little conflict in terms of overlapping technologies because we want to choose the best in breed technologies there. So we're happy to work with you to understand, what it is that you're going through currently, what you have currently in terms of technical debt and what technologies you're utilizing, and then help work with you to find the right approach in order to accomplish what you're looking for. And that helps us get to that retention rate that you see at the end there, 95% retention rate with our current customers for delivering solutions on time and within budget. So we'll work with you on that. So I know we've got a couple minutes left here, but this is just kind of wrapping up. So, the recording for this webinar will be actually emailed to you afterwards. So there will be a link to a follow-up email. Despite the current health concerns, we are still moving forward with a number of different live events. Some of them are getting postponed, but we're happy to work with you and set up a discovery call. So let's understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish and the best way that we can help work together to help get to your goals. So that said, I know we've got just a couple minutes left. Emily, I'll throw it back to you.
Great, thank you guys. That was really good information. At this point, we do have a few minutes for questions. So if you have a question, feel free to type that into the chat window. Looks like we already have a couple coming in here. So first question, would a sysadmin be responsible for managing who has access to the ECM once Simflofy is brought in?
So the short answer is yes. We do partner with our customers. Now, they have to handle, so if they have people coming in and leaving, we have to be notified of that so we can update the front end. But they have responsibility as sysadmins to manage the access point to the ECM or the repository. So the short answer is yes, but we also have to be notified. That's why we like to partner with them so we can stay abreast of who's accessing what for auditing purposes.
Great. Next question, are there instances where an organization should delete instead of archiving their content to free up space on their ECM?
My gut instinct is to say no. Now, some people may say that well, we're running out of space in our file system, so in order to save money, let's delete things. Now, let's think about what happens when you delete something. You're leaving yourself open to liability. So it's best just to archive everything and not get caught unawares when people start asking questions.
Got it. All right, well, I think those are the questions that we have, and I think we're just about out of time here. So thanks to Eric and Mike for their thoughts on federating content. Just a reminder, everyone will get an email from us with a link to this recording, the slides, and additional resources. If you still have a question that we didn't get to today, or you wish to speak to us further and get that discovery call set up, feel free to reply to that email or reach out to us directly. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.